She was banished for being too dangerous. Kareth still remembered the council's cold stares, the sharp sound of the judgment bell, and the final order that cast her out from her people. They did not care that every fight she had won was to protect the weak. They only saw her as a threat to their order, a warrior who would not bow. Since then, she had wandered from world to world, her shadow stretching across dusty markets and dim spaceport halls. She fought for coin when she needed food, took guard. Jobs for traders she did not care about, and kept her heart locked away. She had no friends, no home, no reason to stay anywhere for long. But sometimes she thought of one person. Daniel Ross, a human. Fragile by her people's standards, yet filled with a strange kind of courage. She had met him years ago on the planet Tyros, when she had been hired to protect a convoy. Daniel had been part of a research team there. They had spoken only briefly, but his eyes had not held the fear she was used to. He had smiled at her, even after seeing her in battle. It had been 2 years since then. He had returned to his own worlds, and she had continued drifting. She didn't know why she still remembered his voice, or why the memory felt warm. Now, as she sat on a cold crate in the shadow of a landing bay, she wondered if he even remembered her. She doubted it. Humans had short lives and fast-moving days. She wanted to speak to him again, but she didn't know how. She had no way to contact him, no reason he would want to hear from her. She told herself it was foolish, but the thought stayed with her like a silent passenger in her mind. A freighter hissed to a stop in front of her, its engines fading. Cargo workers moved past her, giving her a wide berth. Her kind were taller, broader, with sharp bone ridges along their arms and backs. To humans, she looked like a weapon given life. That was the problem. No matter where she went, people saw only the danger, not the person inside. She closed her eyes, listening to the hum of the engines. She told herself it was fine. She didn't need anyone. She didn't need him. But the truth was, space felt bigger without Daniel in it. That night, Kareth took a guard job for a merchant who needed to move goods across the desert wastes of Iridan IV. The pay was small, but she didn't care. A job kept her from thinking too much. The journey was uneventful until the second night. The desert wind howled through the camp, and she stood watch by the fire. She was staring at the stars when she heard footsteps behind her. A voice spoke, still standing tall as ever. She turned sharply. It was him. Daniel Ross stood a few paces away, wearing a dust-stained travel jacket, a pack slung over one shoulder. His smile was the same calm, steady, like the storms of the desert could not touch it. For a moment, Kareth could not speak. She had faced pirate captains and clan warlords without blinking, but now her throat felt tight. "You," she said. "At last. What are you doing here?" "Looking for you," Daniel replied simply. That answer caught her off guard. She had expected some accident, some coincidence, not this. "Why?" she asked. "I need someone I can trust," Daniel said. "I'm heading into dangerous space. I have something worth protecting, and I don't just mean cargo. I've seen the way you fight, Kareth. You don't just survive, you keep others alive. I want you to guard me." She stared at him. No one had ever said they wanted her near. People paid her for her skill, yes, but it was out of fear or necessity, not trust, not choice. "You know what I am," she said quietly. "What they call—" I know," Daniel said. "They call you dangerous." But danger to who? Not to me. The wind carried silence between them. Something in her chest, something she thought had been frozen, shifted. That night, she sat by the fire while Daniel rested. She thought about the years she had spent alone. She thought about the way she had been pushed away, the way every step she took in the galaxy seemed to lead nowhere. Now here was this human small, compared to her people, with no claws, no natural armor asking her to stand by his side. Not because he had no choice, but because he believed in her God. It was strange. And it was hope. The next morning, they began their journey together. Daniel didn't talk much about what lay ahead, but he did tell her about his travels, human colonies she had never seen, the vast oceans of Earth, the strange human habit of singing during long trips. Kareth found herself listening more than she expected. She found herself smiling once when he tried to describe the taste of chocolate, using desert spices as a comparison. She didn't know where this road would lead. She didn't know if she would fail him or save him. But for the first time in years, she felt like her steps mattered. She had been banished for being too dangerous, until the human asked her to guard him. And she had said yes. Asterisk, the sun of Iridon IV burned high above the desert, turning the sand into a golden sea. Kareth walked beside the small rover Daniel had rented. The machine hummed quietly, carrying supplies and a few sealed containers. Daniel kept locked. They had been traveling for 2 days, but Kareth felt something strange between them. Daniel was here, in front of her. She could hear his voice when he spoke, see the way the light touched his face in the evenings. And yet, she still felt distant from him. It was like they were walking on 2 paths that ran side by side, but never truly crossed. She told herself it was fine. They had a job to do. She was here to protect him, not to share her mind. But deep inside, a question kept turning over. Does he really know me? Does he want to? That night, they made camp in a shallow canyon. The wind was softer here, the sand settling around the rocks like spilled gold dust. Daniel lit a small fire, and Kareth stood on a high ledge, scanning the horizon for movement. She looked down and saw him working quietly. He was focused, careful with each step. Humans were slower than her kind, but Daniel's movements carried purpose. She wanted to speak to him, really speak, but the words felt heavy. It had been years since she had talked to anyone about her past. Instead, she asked something simple. Why did you leave your home? Daniel looked up at her, his face half lit by the fire. I had to, he said. Something I needed to do. Something bigger than staying comfortable. Kareth tilted her head. And you came here into the wastes? He smiled faintly. If I tell you everything now, you might run away. I do not run, she said firmly. I know, Daniel replied, and there was warmth in his voice. The next day, they passed a long stretch of empty sand. Hours went by without a word. Kareth's mind wandered back to the years before exile. She remembered the old sparring grounds, the sounds of her clan's training horns, the way she had once believed she would be part of something forever. She had lost all of it. Not because she was weak, but because she had been too strong, too unwilling to bow her head. She glanced at Daniel. He had chosen to leave his home. She had been forced to leave hers. The thought made her chest tighten. That night, she found herself standing closer to the fire than usual. Daniel was repairing a small device from the rover. Sparks jumped in the air as he worked. You moved away, Kareth said quietly, surprising herself. Daniel looked up. Yeah. Do you miss it? She asked. He was silent for a moment. Every day. But missing something doesn't mean you can go back. Sometimes you just have to move forward, even if the road feels empty. She felt those words like a weight in her chest. The road felt empty to her too, until he had asked her to walk it with him. On the 3rd day, trouble found them. A skimmer bike appeared on the horizon, then another. Within minutes, 3 desert raiders were circling the rover. They wore scavenged armor, their weapons rusty but deadly. Kareth moved like a storm. She leaped from the sand, catching one raider by the arm and twisting hard until his weapon clattered to the ground. She kicked another away, the impact sending him rolling across the dunes. The third raider aimed at Daniel. Kareth's heart slammed in her chest. She moved faster than thought, her body placing itself between him and the incoming fire. The shot burned across her shoulder, but she didn't stop. With one swing, she knocked the raider off his bike. The fight was over. In seconds, Daniel ran to her side. "You're hurt." "It is nothing," she said, though the burn ached deep. He looked at her with something more than gratitude. There was understanding there, too, like he saw past the armor she wore on her body and in her heart. That night, as they camped again, the silence between them felt different. Kareth still felt distant from him in some ways. She still didn't know everything about his mission, or why he had searched for her after so many years. But after the fight, she knew something important. He wasn't just a traveler to protect. He was someone worth protecting. As the firelight flickered across the canyon walls, Daniel looked at her and said, "You could have let them hit me." "I could not," she replied simply. "Why not?" He asked. She hesitated, then said, "Because you asked me to guard you. And I want to." Daniel didn't smile this time. He nodded slowly, like the answer meant more to him than he wanted to show. When Kareth lay down to rest, she thought of something she had not felt in years. Hope. Maybe the distance between them was still there now, but maybe it didn't have to stay forever. For the first time in a long while, she thought she might find a way to cross it. She was banished for being too dangerous, until the human asked her to guard him. Now, she thought, maybe that was the first step toward something more. The desert ended after 3 more days of travel. Ahead lay dark cliffs, sharp as broken teeth, rising against the pale sky. Daniel said they were close to the next waypoint. Kareth stayed silent. She was walking beside him, but she felt far away from him again. The fight with the raiders had brought them closer for a while, but now the quiet was back. She wanted to ask him more about why he had left his home, about why he had searched her out of all the warriors in the galaxy. But every time she opened her mouth, the words felt heavy, like stones she couldn't lift. That night, they camped at the edge of the cliffs. The stars here were bright and clear, the desert wind replaced by the low hum of insects hidden in the eye. Rocks. Daniel sat on a flat stone, checking his datapad. Kareth sharpened her blade, the slow scrape of metal filling the space between them. She wanted to tell him she was glad he had found her again. She wanted to ask if he had missed her, the way she had missed him. But instead, she asked, "What is at the end of this map of yours?" Daniel paused. "A place I'm not sure still exists. A human station, lost years ago. It might hold data that can help my people in the future." "Why not go alone?" she asked. "Because some places aren't safe to walk into without someone you can trust at your back." Kareth looked down at her blade. She could feel the weight of his words, but she still didn't know how to answer the question she had not spoken aloud. "Why me?" The next morning, they started climbing the cliffs. The narrow paths wound upward, loose stones falling into the darkness below. Twice, Daniel slipped, and Kareth caught him before he could fall. Each time, he thanked her. Each time, she felt something small but steady building between them. By midday, the air had grown cooler. They reached a plateau where the ground was littered with old wreckage, broken machines, rusted weapons, scraps of armor from battles long past. Daniel crouched to examine a piece of metal. This was from a scout ship, human design. Must have been here for decades. Kareth scanned the horizon. "Then we are close." He nodded, but his eyes were on the wreckage, his thoughts far away. That night, the wind carried the sound of movement. Kareth rose instantly, blade in hand. Shapes emerged from the dark 3 figures in light armor, their weapons drawn. "Travelers," one called. "Leave your supplies and go. Or stay. And we take your lives too. Daniel glanced at her. Your call. Kareth stepped forward, her voice low and calm. You will walk away. They laughed. The fight lasted only seconds. Kareth moved like water over stone, every strike precise. When the last attacker fled into the darkness, Daniel exhaled slowly. You always move like you already know how the fight will end, he said. Kareth cleaned her blade. I do, because I decide the ending. He smiled faintly at that, and for a moment the distance between them felt smaller. Later, as the fire burned low, Daniel spoke without looking at her. When I left Earth, I didn't think I'd see you again. Her chest tightened. And yet here I am. Yeah, he said, and I'm glad. I didn't realize how much I missed talking to you until I saw you in that landing bay. Kareth's gaze stayed on the flames. I did not think you remembered me. Daniel looked at her then, his voice soft. I remembered. The silence that followed was not empty this time. It was full of something else, something warmer. The next day, the plateau gave way to a narrow valley. Old metal pillars jutted from the ground, covered in vines. Daniel's pace quickened. This is part of the station's outer defenses, he said. We're close. Kareth kept her eyes on the shadows. She could feel they were being watched. Sure enough, as they moved deeper, a figure stepped out, a tall alien in dark armor, her body marked with the clan tattoos Kareth knew too well. Kareth, the alien said coldly, you return to the lands of your clan. You bring a human here. Why? Daniel looked between them, tense. Friend of yours? No, Kareth said. Not anymore. That night, they camped just outside the old station's perimeter. Kareth couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the alien's eyes full of the same judgment she had seen years ago when she was exiled. Daniel was awake too, working quietly. Finally, she spoke. When I was cast out, I thought no one would ever stand beside me again. And yet, here you are. Daniel looked up at her. I'm not going anywhere. For the first time, Kareth believed him. She was banished for being too dangerous, until the human asked her to guard him. Now, with the station just ahead and danger closing in, she realized she didn't just want to guard him. She wanted to keep walking beside him, no matter where the road led. The morning came cold and gray. The station's towers rose in the distance, half buried in vines and sand, silent for decades. Kareth stood at the edge of the camp, watching the horizon. The wind carried the faint scent of metal and something older, the smell of her clan's lands. She felt uneasy. Not because of the danger ahead, but because Daniel was here, walking into the heart of her past. She had not told him everything. She wanted to, but the words stayed trapped inside her. It had been years since she had cared about what anyone thought of her, yet with Daniel, she did care. They broke camp and walked toward the station. The path narrowed between jagged rocks, shadows falling over them like dark fingers. Kareth's sharp hearing caught the sound first. Footsteps, deliberate and close. She stopped, raising a hand for Daniel to halt. Figures stepped out from behind the rocks. Her clan's warriors. At the front was the same tall alien from the night before. Her armor gleamed black, marked with the sigil of the clan leader, Kareth. The warrior said, her voice like stone, you were cast out. You have no right to return. Daniel stepped forward slightly, his voice steady. We're only passing through. The warrior's gaze moved to him. The human has courage. But courage will not save him here. Kareth's grip on her weapon tightened. He is under my protection. That means nothing, the warrior replied coldly. You are nothing. The words burned in Kareth's chest. Once they would have cut deep. Now she felt something else, a fire that had been sleeping. Daniel looked at her, his eyes meeting hers. He didn't say anything, but his presence was enough. She stepped forward. "If you want him, you will go through me." The warrior's mouth curved into something like a smile. So be it. The fight was fast and brutal. Kareth moved with the precision she had honed in years of exile. Every strike was calculated, every step controlled. Her opponent was strong, but Kareth's focus never wavered, because Daniel was behind her, and losing was not an option. The clash of blades echoed through the rocks. When the final blow came, Kareth struck with the flat of her weapon, knocking her opponent to the ground without killing her. The other warriors stood silent. "You could have ended her," Daniel said quietly. "I could have," Kareth replied, breathing hard. "But I will not be what they think I am." The clan warriors stepped aside, letting them pass Dot as they walked. Daniel kept glancing at her. She wanted to meet his eyes, to say something about how much it meant that he trusted her, but the words wouldn't come. She told herself there would be time later. They reached the outer gates of the station as the sun began to set. The metal doors were half buried. The paint faded, but the human symbols were still visible. Daniel ran his fingers over the markings like someone touching the pages of an old book. "This is it," he said softly. Kareth stood beside him, silent. She felt the distance between them again, not because he was far away, but because there were things she wanted him to know that she could not speak. She wanted to tell him she had missed him all those years. She wanted to tell him that, when he found her again, it had felt like something lost had been returned. Instead, she said, "We should go inside before nightfall." The interior was dark and still, the air heavy with dust. Their footsteps echoed as they moved through long corridors lined with rusted consoles. Daniel's face was lit by the glow of his datapad as he searched for the central archive. Kareth followed, her senses alert. She thought about how small he seemed in this massive, empty place, and yet how steady his steps were. Humans, she realized, were strange. Fragile in body, but strong in a way that could not be measured by muscle or claws. They reached the archive. Chamber at last. The walls were lined with storage units, some broken, others still sealed. Daniel began working on the control panel. "This might take a while," he said. "The systems are old." Kareth took position near the door, scanning the shadows. For a long moment, there was only the sound of his tools. Then he said quietly, "Back on Earth, before I left, I didn't know if I'd ever see you again. I thought maybe you'd forgotten me." She turned to face him. "I remembered." He looked up at her, and in his eyes she saw the same warmth she had seen years ago. Outside, the wind began to rise. Kareth knew they would have to leave soon. The station would not remain untouched for long. But for now, standing in the quiet glow of the archive, the distance between them felt smaller than it had in years. She still didn't know how to tell him everything she felt. But she knew one thing. She would not let him walk this road alone. She was banished for being too dangerous until the human asked her to guard him. And now, with the past at her heels and the future uncertain, she began to think that maybe guarding him was the first step toward guarding something far greater. The archive chamber hummed softly as old systems came to life. Dust floated in the air like tiny stars. Daniel stood at the main console, his fingers moving quickly over the controls. Kareth watched from the doorway, her eyes scanning the empty hall beyond. "You're quiet," Daniel said without looking up. "I am listening," she replied. "To what?" She hesitated. "To you." That made him glance at her. There was something in his expression, not surprise exactly, but a kind of warmth she had seen before, long ago on Tyros. For a moment, she almost said the words that had been locked in her chest since the day he found her again. "I missed you." But then the console beeped and the moment was gone. "I've got it," Daniel said. "The data's here. Star charts, research logs, and something else. I think it's a prototype. Design. could help human ships travel farther, faster. Kareth stepped closer. Then we should leave. Your enemies will come for it. Our enemies now, Daniel corrected with a faint smile. She didn't argue. They packed the portable drives into his pack and moved quickly through the dark corridors. But as they neared the outer gate, Kareth's ears caught the sound she had been expecting. Footsteps, dozens of them, moving in unison. They emerged from the shadows like a tide, her clan's warriors, weapons raised. At their head was the same armored leader she had faced before, her eyes burning with cold fury. You steal from this place, the leader said, and you bring a human into our lands. This ends here. Daniel's voice was steady. We're not here to take from you. We're here to take back what was lost. The leader ignored him. Her gaze was fixed on Kareth. You were given exile. You should have stayed gone. Kareth's grip tightened on her weapon. The distance she had felt from Daniel all these days pressed on her now. She had fought beside him, protected him, but she had not told him why. It mattered so much, and now she might not have another chance. Daniel, she said without turning her head. Yeah? If I fall, you run. Not happening, he said immediately. This is not your fight. It is now? His words landed heavy and certain, and she realized something. This was the human way. They didn't measure danger the same way others did. They didn't step back when they cared about something or someone. The leader moved first, swinging her blade toward Kareth. The clash rang out in the cold air. Warriors closed in from both sides. Kareth fought with the precision of awe. Someone who had survived every kind of battle. Her strikes were clean, her movements unbroken. But even with her skill, the numbers were against them. Daniel moved behind her, using cover to fire small bursts from his sidearm. He wasn't as fast or as strong, but his aim was sharp, and every shot was placed with purpose. At one point, a warrior broke through Kareth's defense and charged at Daniel. Kareth saw it too late, until Daniel rolled aside, using the fallen wreckage to trip his attacker, then finished the fight himself. She felt something fierce stir in her chest. He wasn't just surviving. He was adapting, fighting for himself, fighting for them. The leader came at Kareth again, her strikes heavier now, her anger growing. Kareth met every blow, but the fight drove them back toward the cliffside. You could have been great among us, the leader said through clenched teeth. Instead, you waste yourself on this human. Kareth's voice was calm, but her blade struck hard. If guarding him is waste, then I will waste my life gladly. The final strike came with all the strength in her body. She disarmed the leader, sending her weapon clattering across the stone. The other warriors froze. Kareth stepped back, breathing hard. Leave us or face me again. One by one, the warriors turned away. When the last of them had gone, Kareth looked at Daniel. His face was streaked with dust, his arm bleeding where a blade had grazed him. But his eyes were steady. You could have run, she said. I told you, he replied. Not happening. She swallowed. The distance between them still existed, but it had shrunk in the heat of battle. She didn't know if she could tell him everything yet, but she knew he understood something important now. I have walked alone for many years, she said slowly, but I think I do not wish to walk alone anymore. Daniel's smile was tired but real. Then don't. They left the cliffs behind as night fell. The station's towers faded into the dark, but the data they carried was secure. Kareth still felt the pull of words she couldn't speak, but the sadness of their years apart had shifted. Now there was something stronger alongside it, the knowledge that they were walking the same road. Side by side, she had been banished for being too dangerous, until the human asked her to guard him. And now, she thought, maybe guarding him was not just her duty, but her choice. The road away from the cliffs wound through long stretches of silent desert. The wind carried fine grains of silver sand that glittered in the starlight. Daniel's boots crunched over the hard ground, and Kareth's longer stride kept her just ahead of him. They didn't speak for a long time. The weight of the stolen. Data was heavy in Daniel's pack, and the memory of the fight still burned in both of them. Kareth kept scanning the dark horizon. She had fought her own people before, but something about this last fight unsettled her. She had told Daniel she didn't want to walk alone anymore, but the truth was, she didn't know how to walk with someone. Not really. Your arm. She said finally, glancing at the cut from earlier. It's fine, Daniel answered. It is bleeding. Still fine. His voice was calm, but she caught the slight stiffness in his movements. Without another word, she stopped walking and stepped toward him. He frowned, but didn't resist when she pulled a small med kit from her belt dot as she cleaned the wound. Daniel studied her face in the dim light. You always keep distance, he said softly. She froze for a heartbeat. Distance keeps people alive, sometimes, he said. Other times, it just makes them lonely. She didn't look at him, but his words stayed with her as they walked on Dot by the second night. They reached the edge of an abandoned mining town. The structures were skeletal frames of metal, the walls eaten by time and wind. This is as good a place as any to rest, Daniel said. Kareth nodded. She found them a sheltered corner inside what had once been a storage bay. The air was dry and still got as they settled. Daniel took the portable drives from his pack. If we can reach the relay station in the city, I can send this data straight to Earth. No one can take it from us after that. Your people will be stronger because of it? She asked. They'll have hope, he said simply. Hope. The word was not one her people used often. To them, survival was enough. But Daniel's kind, they chased more than survival. They chased better futures. Even after loss, they kept trying. She found herself wondering if that was why he had come back for her. Later, after they had eaten a small meal in silence, Daniel leaned back against the wall. Kareth, why didn't you ever send a message? She knew what he meant. The years between their first meeting and now had been long and empty of words. I did not know if you would want to hear from me, she admitted. I thought you would forget. He laughed once, softly. Humans don't forget the people who change their lives. His voice was gentle, but it carried weight. It made her chest tighten. She looked away, pretending to check her weapon. But the truth burned in her mind. She had wanted to send something, even just a short signal. But every time, fear had stopped her. Fear of what he might say, or not say Dot just before dawn. A low hum woke her. She rose instantly, scanning the shadows. Daniel was already up, his hand near his sidearm. The hum grew louder, resolving into the sound of engines. Lights cut across the ruined buildings, and Kareth's pulse quickened. They tracked us, she said. Daniel's eyes narrowed. How many? Too many. They moved fast, packing their gear. But as they reached the edge of the town, figures dropped from the sky on grav belts. Not her people this time, but mercenaries in dark armor. Their leader's voice boomed through a cum speaker. Hand over the human. Leave the drives and walk away alive. Kareth stepped in front of Daniel without thinking. You will take neither. The mercenaries advanced. The fight was fierce. Blaster fire lit the ruined streets. Kareth's blade flashed in the chaos, cutting through the nearest attackers. Daniel moved with cover fire, using every piece of wreckage as a shield dot at one point. A mercenary aimed a stun lance directly at Daniel's back. Kareth lunged without thinking, taking the strike on her arm and sending the attacker sprawling. The shock burned through her muscles, but she stayed standing. Kareth! Daniel shouted, grabbing her before another shot could hit. Her vision blurred for a second, but she shook it off. Keep moving. They broke through the last line of mercenaries, racing toward the desert beyond. The hum of engines faded behind them as they disappeared into the dunes. Only when they were certain no one was following did they stop. Kareth sank to one knee, her breathing ragged. Daniel crouched beside her. "You saved me," he said quietly. "You would have done." "Same." "I already have," he said. His tone was light, but his eyes were steady on hers. "And I'll keep doing it. Distance or not, you're not alone anymore. Not unless you want to be." For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Kareth let out a slow breath. The sadness she had carried, the years of silence, the doubt about whether he still cared, it hadn't vanished, but it no longer felt like a wall she couldn't cross. "I do not want to be alone," she said finally. Daniel smiled, and in that moment she knew he understood exactly what she